Hey guys, Miss Osuna here. Let's do another croquis pose with attitude. So go on ahead, set your paper up, your oval, your straight line, measure all of your head spaces. If you're doing a 9-head croquis, that is standard. You can also do a 10 head, and the ankle, instead of at 8, in that case would be at 9. All right. Grab your little piece of paper, rip it off, and measure the head spaces. That's your easy way to be able to quickly make sure that everything is in proportion. Because at work, you will not always have the chance to do any type of ruler or working at a computer. Sometimes you're just going to be in a meeting and you'll need to be able to create a croquis really quickly and then interpret whatever the people around you are saying. So this is a hack for that. Put your numbers and your spaces. We know Horny Alex was caught French kissing Carrie Ann's grandmother. That is the acronym that students before you have come up with, and that's for head, apex, waist, crotch, fingertip, knee, calf, ankle, and ground. So starting at the center, that middle line, we're going to do our guideline. So 1.5 is where we start. Left side's a little bit lower, right side a little bit higher. Then it's the opposite for the waist. The waist is at 3, the shoulder guideline is at 1.5. Once we do that, we want to go on ahead and put in our left torso. That is a parenthesis facing slightly right. And from there, we want to measure to make sure we have 1.5 head spaces so that we can set up our second part of the torso. So the 1 head space is the waist, but 1.5 head spaces is the width of our shoulder and hip. All right, now we have our curve from our waist coming down. On the left side, it's a bigger curve. On the right side, it's flatter. So let's pop in that guideline. Remember, crotch for people who are average height is at 4. But because we are doing models who are taller than average, our crotch is 4.25. And that crotch guideline is parallel to the waist. Once we have the crotch in, we want to find our new center. So the center is on our middle axis line in this case. Put in your bikini bottoms. And then we are going to do our anchor leg. It's going to be on the left. So find the middle of your leg opening on the left side and drag down. By the time you get back down to the ankle, you want to be at the center line. So in my case, I'm doing a 10 head croquis, so my ankle is going to be at 9. So you want to be close to that middle line for your ankle. If you are doing a standard 9 head croquis, then the ankle is at number 8. Okay, so we know our bust guideline is parallel to the shoulder guideline. So our bust is at 2.25. And that does depend on what your target market is, but for our purposes, it's going to be at 2.25. And so our bust is going to have a tiny little bit of the bust profile on the right. So if the right bust cup comes slightly to the right side of our torso, because you'll see a little bit of it as this particular pose is twisting. This is a more advanced croquis pose. Now let's put in our knee guideline parallel to the crotch. So that knee guideline is parallel to the crotch, and then drag out your thigh guideline stopping at our knee. And then it's going to bend and come back toward that center from the knee down. So you can see the attitude in this pose. Okay, up next, I am going to reposition the head. So I'm just going to change colors here so you can see where I am now drawing the head. So definitely take your time, and I have the neck on the right side of our center line. So when I reposition this head, I'm drawing the neck completely to the right side of the center line now. And Then I'm going to start with the profile because this croquis is looking slightly left. So the left side is flatter. The right side of our head now is going to become more round because you're going to see that profile and the shape of her cranium. So that's why I changed colors. So just go on ahead and reposition your head. And then you're going to divide horizontally, and your vertical is going to be closer to the left side. So you will see more of the face on the right, less of the face on the left side. Up next, we're going to deal with our arms. So the arm on the left side of the page is going to hide underneath our hip. And then on the right side of the page, you will see the full arm. Now, hiding one arm is usually just for the dynamic and the balance. So it's up to you. You can show both if you'd like, but it's to balance everything out. So on the left side, flesh out that arm because we have the guideline in place. And once again, I'm tucking it slightly behind our hip, but you can decide if you want it to fully show. But I like that balance because the hip is sticking out on the left side of our page. So I want the attitude of that hip to be seen. That's the reason why I'm tucking the arm and the hand slightly behind the hip. Now we're going to sneak in the details there of our hand. And remember, these are very soft lines that have a little tiny bit of a curve, and our knuckles are like a W. And then up next, once we finish the fingers, we want to go on ahead and move on for our next set of details. So up next, we have our thigh, and the thigh is important for you to show the kneecap side on the right and then the calf muscle side on the left. So make sure that you really emphasize the kneecap side is on the right, calf muscle is higher and on the left. Then pop in your socket, excuse me, your socket for the ankle. Again, mine is going to be at 9 because I'm doing 10 heads. Yours will be at 8 if you're doing 9 heads. So drag down those parentheses. And now remember this, guidelines are there to help, not hurt. So you don't have to land on the guideline if it doesn't look right. It's just there as a reference. Pop in your foot, and then we'll move on to the next leg. So we always start with that anchor leg. Now we're moving on to leg number 2. And once again, really emphasize the kneecap is on the right side. The back of our knee is on the left here. So make sure you see that difference. The kneecap side is a little bit lower. The back of the knee is a little bit higher. And then drag that down. And now notice we come back together for our ankle. So that's important to notice, is that the ankle is at the same position. So even though the knee is lower on leg number 2 that we're drawing right now, the ankles are going to come back together, and that's going to help add to the foreshortening effect. And then here's something to be aware of. A lot of people like to have a small hand and a small foot. So you can do that, but technically it should be about 1 head space. But lots of people do like to have a tinier foot than that. And up next, of course, we are going to go on ahead and flesh out arm number 2. So we know shoulder to elbow is 1.5 to 3. And then the length of our elbow to the wrist is 3 to 4.25. So you can go back to that center line and measure, and you will move things slightly up and down just to add to the reality of it. So even though the shoulder is a little higher, you'll move it a tiny bit higher, for example, but in general, that is the guideline. The shoulder to the elbow is approximately at the 1.5 point to the 3. when you're measuring the center line. So go on ahead, flesh that out, make those adjustments, make sure that your elbow to wrist is approximately the same length as the waist, which is at 3 to 4 1/4. And again, I say approximately because we are playing here with foreshortening. And then up next, we're just going to add some of the collarbone detail with our diagonal lines slightly off center. So one on the right is a little to the right, the other is a tiny bit to the left. They don't touch in the center. And then pull up your final details. You can darken, you can add a little bit of knee detail, you can add a little bit of ankle bone detail just with your half diamond shapes. And that's it for this tutorial. All right, I will see you guys in class. Until then, happy sketching.